I'm Laura Copil. I'm a senior design and build implementation consultant, level 3 Evalue certified on source to pay, and I've been working with TSM for the past 5 years with some background in AP and funny enough practice system admin experience. And this is my colleague Bintul.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Bintul Kazmi and I'm one of the implementation consultants here at TSM. Been with the company about 3 years, yeah, not so long, yeah, and loving it.
We all do, don't we?
Yeah.
So we'll be speaking to you today about ESG in procurement. We'll be using the arrows because otherwise we might be here for a while. So what is essentially ESG? It has been spoken about previously in one of the previous sessions, but essentially it stands for environmental, social and governance, and these are 3 critical factors used to evaluate the sustainability and ethical impact of an organization. Now, we know that procurement plays a central role in a company's supply chain, and having ESG integrated into procurement is very important for a number of reasons, such as managing risk by identifying risk in the supply chain, by focusing on those suppliers that may be involved in harmful environmental policies or poor labor conditions. It can also help with cost savings and efficiency by allowing you to engage more with suppliers that use renewable energy and recyclable materials, and therefore reducing your environmental impact and operational cost. It also helps with waste reduction and energy savings, which again lead to cost savings and efficiency. It also helps companies comply with local and international regulations, because governments and regulatory bodies are implementing more and more ESG-related regulations, such as carbon emission limits, anti-fraud regulations, and even labor laws. And it also helps with building up on the company's reputation and brand value, as consumers and investors are increasingly prioritizing companies with strong ESG-related policies. In Evalue, ESG is managed at supplier level and at catalog level. In terms of managing it at the supplier level, we have the supplier record that provides a comprehensive and actionable record of environmental information, and we can see that as firstly as a repository of documentation related to environmental impact, as well as by using reporting on GHG emissions. And the way reporting works is that it uses the data collected by firstly, as an example, it can be collected by using questionnaires. So you can send out self-assessment surveys to suppliers and then evaluate their answers. And you can use the out-of-the-box questionnaires that are focused on sustainability, as well as design your own climate change risk surveys. And secondly, you can also collect the data by uploading third-party data through ETL. Firstly, you would choose your data source, be it international or country-specific or generic or commodity-specific. And then with Evalue will use an interface to connect with the chosen data source, and then load the emission and intensity data, as well as coverage, scope, trend, and verification details. In terms of documentation and certificates, we have a section on the supplier record that's called Documents and Certs, and this tab offers a space to collect all the supporting documentation and certification relating to Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions from the supplier. And we have a number of types of documents already out of the box. For example, action plan, CSR report, public target, sustainability policy, and these document types can be used to either attach a file or simply add a link to an external document. Then you can use reporting, as I was saying, and the data collected related to GHG emissions is stored in a dedicated space on the supplier record called climate change or ESG, depending on the version of the product. And in the sections, emissions are displayed both in absolute value or intensity, for example, kilos per dollar of revenue or per employee, because using intensity rather than value, it just helps obtain a comparable figure as it factors in either size or revenue. Then it also shows you the verification status, like medium, low, high, or assurance status, or as well the trend, whether it's positive, negative, or steady or neutral. I'm not sure what the other option is. Okay, thank you. And I was also mentioning questionnaires, so ESG questionnaires. Navalny has an inbuilt questionnaire tool that already comes equipped with specific questions that are used. And the way this works very efficiently is that each section in this questionnaire would be linked to an indicator, or to a list of indicators such as here, or sub-criteria. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So each question would be scored to basically evaluate the answer provided by the supplier, and then each section is linked to one of the criteria or sub-criteria that are used in order to essentially build the overall score on sustainability. And you can also design your own questionnaires and amend them as you feel fit. And where all this comes in is the ESG scorecard. So the Avalia comes with a pre-configured scorecard that shows us the overall risk level, and then this is broken down in several criteria. Click 4 times. Yeah. So social responsibility, we have corporate governance, and then environmental and carbon reduction. And underneath each of these, you can see other sub-criteria. Essentially, these are calculated from the data collected by different places, like the existence of key documents like sustainability policy or CSR reports, performance level provided by EcoVadis or another third-party provider, scores calculated from the information coming from the GHG emission reports, such as Scope 1 emissions, Scope 2 emissions, Scope 3 upstream or downstream. So all of these will be looked in a different sub-criteria, and they will make up the score at criteria level, and then you have the overall risk here that is comprehensive of all of these. And you can always update the actual overall risk, so you can have it as a calculated one, but then an authorized user can also update it manually based on other information that might not be in the system, for example. Okay. And the way the use of the scorecard works is that first you would select your suppliers. So you can select them based on your own criteria, but you can also use the tags to shortlist those suppliers that you want to discuss on these topics. And in order to the tags that are available, one of them is two of them are out of the box, and one of them is automatically applied to those suppliers, the top 10 suppliers that are operating those commodities flagged as critical for GHG emissions. So that's GHG reduction plan. And then also there's another tag on CO2 watch list that can be applied manually to those additional suppliers that you want to work with. So once you have selected your suppliers, you generate or update the scorecard. And this way you can periodically assess the maturity of an engagement of the selected suppliers. And then you can measure the progress over time. And you can do that by using the trend icons. Keep clicking. So you can see here we've got the icon that shows its progress. Click again, please. Or whether it's new or going up or down. And then you can also use the trends and history section. That gives you a quick access to the historical data. And of course you can also do a data analysis using the reporting module. And lastly, or the last step would be to initiate the collaboration plans and start working with your suppliers to start improving their situation. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Bintul.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Okay, so just to give you guys a background in terms of how collaboration plans work. So essentially, plans for collaboration can be done across the system depending on the situation you're currently in. So I'll come to how we can use it for ESG, but just to give you a holistic view in terms of different kinds of options you have. So I mean, collaboration plan is a very strong feature in terms of how you can come together with the supplier. You can discuss any ongoing issues, if you have any concerns, or just to come in together to have any innovation, going on. So the 4 core kinds are your corrective action plan. So it's just to address your day-to-day issues linked to quality, delivery, prices. All of that can be taken up in those plans. Then you have improvement plans that are essentially used for suppliers that are like underperforming. And then you can have control mitigation plans that can be used if you spot a risky situation with a supplier that has come on the back of a risk assessment you've done recently. Or you could have the last one, which is innovation, where you essentially come together with the supplier to discuss any ideas that could generate business for both the parties engaged. And moving on, next one. We could use these plans to have the ESG kick in as well. So how that would essentially work is that we would working together with the supplier to have objectives set by to control, let's say, the carbon footprint, to control how the efficiency is working in terms of the goals that have been put in place. So it can be broken down into a structure. I'll show you on screen as well how it looks in the system, but just to give you a little background, the first phase is obviously where you have a plan created, so you can decide what kind of a plan would be selected, if it's corrective, improvement, mitigation, and you can also have them categorized based on different domains, so you can see if it's linked to, let's say, environmental protection or any other issue. And you can also have a subdomain to see what kind of criteria you're looking at. So for instance, if it's to do with carbon emission, that can be captured on the plan, and as an ongoing activity, you can work with the supplier on that. Secondly, you can have an action item management. So this gives you a lot of clarity in terms of creating a plan, tracking and managing it with the supplier very closely. You can have a dedicated team. You can have that monitoring and tracking happening, where you can have a team set from your side internally and also from the supplier side. And the collaboration feature is in a way useful for both the parties engaged, because you have visibility, you have a lot of control, you have transparency in terms of how the supplier is dealing with the issues on hand or any of the concerns. Here's the next one. And then you can also manage risk. So if there has been a risk that has been picked up, for instance, you have a control mitigation plan, you can have that risk scorecard feature in Ivalia, which can come to life, looking at the issues that have been spotted at the ESG level as well. And lastly, there is a dedicated dashboard for the carbon footprint, just to see how your suppliers are doing. You can monitor your categories and so on. We'll look at that dashboard in detail as we go on. Just the next one. Yeah. Okay, so this is how a collaboration plan would look like in Ivalia on the screen. So as you can see, it's broken down to 3 parts. You've got the first section where you can have your plan description, you can select the kind of a plan, you can have your supplier domain, you can have a subdomain linked to the carbon footprint you're looking at, you can have a detailed description, which is all held in the system. You can have a scope, you can link it to a particular taxonomy, organization, you can have comments, documentation, all of that which will be held while this plan goes to life. And then you can have a dedicated team. You could have people working in, so you can have someone from supplier side, you could have someone from your internal team as well. And based on the kind of the role that user has in the plan, you can assign them roles. So for instance, someone can be a responsible who's actually created the plan, who's taking the ownership, and then you can have someone as a contributor. And during the life cycle of this plan, you can add and remove people as well, so you have that flexibility. And then you also have a mini project management tool, as you could say, where you could have different tasks broken down in terms of who's managing them. You can have start date, end date, you can have them dedicated in terms of dependency as well. And it gives you a very good breakdown in terms of who's doing what, and in terms of tracking, gives you a lot of control. And at the back of these tasks, you have a Gantt chart that comes to life, which shows you the essential life cycle of your actual plan. And lastly, we have a workflow that's attached to this as well, which is a standard Ivalia model. You have workflows to control. We're going to go back, sorry. So you can see at what stage is at the review and when it's finally validated. So that could all be configured and set up as well. And then moving on to the next section, which is essentially the other side of the coin. So you can obviously monitor how the supplier is doing in terms of doing these risk questionnaires and seeing how they're performing. But in terms of how a business can control internally, can be done in Ivalia in different ways. So essentially, you can have sustainable sourcing. Yes, you can train your users to collect and cooperate with suppliers that control their sustainability. Secondly, you can also have carbon footprint data collection happening at the item level, at the granular level as well, which I'll show you how that's done. You could have certification management, so you can have certificates with suppliers at the supplier level, but also at an item level, just to break it down, just so you have clarity which item is doing how. Next one. And you can have the product filtering and recommendations, so the system will actually prompt you and tell you if you've selected something that's against your carbon footprint rules. You have reporting and analytics, which is a dedicated dashboard which tells you how your categories, how your organization, suppliers are doing in terms of your carbon emission risk. And lastly, the supplier collaboration, which we have touched upon. So yeah, you have the improvement plans which you can use to improvise the situation. Now, just to look at in detail how you can control it from the item level. So if you go on to the next screen, yeah, so this is how an item sheet for a product would look in Ivalia. So you can see it's got all the details, but then you can also add impacts. So you can add an impact related to every item. So you can see, you can have the expiration date, you can have the intensity, comments, all of that, which will give the visibility to a buyer in terms of what they're actually procuring. So you go on next. So just to break down the impact value, we can see, or you can capture a lot of detail in here. You can see the type of impact. So you've got carbon emission. You can capture the intensity, the unit you can use. You can decide what kind of impact level it has, if it's low, medium, high. Different items will have different start date and end dates that can also be captured and changed. You could have certificates added at that level. You can control and mandate them. So if a supplier is saying so-and-so item has a very low level of carbon emission, so you can enforce that documentation to be collected. So you can control that in that scope. And you can also add statuses. So you can, if something's not been confirmed, you cannot, you can leave it as a draft. And as soon as it becomes valid, it will be published in the portal. So when users go and buy it, they're selecting the correct item. So if you go on, Laura. And then there's also a tagging functionality. So in the catalogs, you can tag items for a very high visibility in terms of having users to select the right. So it's essentially following a guided buying approach where you tell buyers what to buy and what not. So you can see you have an item tag. So you've marked this particular item as low carbon. So if I go to the next screen. So this is how a buyer would see it on the catalog. So they can filter down the results and they can easily retrieve that information. Sorry, if you go back. No worries. So they can filter down in the advanced filters, and they can also see the tag with the green planet icon, which tells them that this particular item is, in terms of sustainability, is quite high. So they would give preference to something like that. And next, this is how it would look like in a different view, which is your grid view, where you can see the carbon footprint. You can also see the tag. So in terms of highlighting, the businesses have that control where they could highlight certain items based on their footprint. Okay. And then you can also, the buyers can break down the item itself and have a detailed view of the carbon impact. They can see the description. They can also see certification as well associated to this item. Okay, and there's also the directed buying approach where you could show buyers what they're buying. So if you go on the next screen, I can show them too. So as soon as something gets added to a cart, there is a new section on the right that shows you the climate change impact. So that gets captured, and also on the line level, you can see the carbon footprint of an item. So in this way, you're capturing, this information essentially on every screen just to prompt and ensure that the correct items get procured. Okay, and another thing that can be done is that in Ivalia you have a feature where, if a particular item is highlighted as something with a higher carbon footprint, the system will prompt you and guide you to look for alternatives. So if you're interested at that stage, you have the option to go back and look for something that's a better option. So if you go on the next screen, I can show them. Yeah. And with the ease of access, they can go into the actual item and they can go into an alternative and have other options, with their low, medium, rating, and also their carbon footprint as well. So you can enforce this at a very gradual level as well. Okay, lastly, where this all comes to life would be the carbon emission dashboard. So in here, you can leverage calculations and you can see data, and it gives businesses a lot of control in terms of tracking and managing how well the suppliers are doing, how different commodities items, how well they're doing in terms of their carbon footprints, and then this will obviously allow them to make informed decisions and work closely with suppliers. Instead of completely eradicating a supplier relationship, you could continuously work with them to improvise that situation. And there are different benefits. It gives you a global view, it gives you a lot of insight where you can make priorities in terms of which areas to work into and which areas definitely need more attention. You can define targets and you can track that progress in the dashboard, and it gives you a lot of control in terms of having all that data coming to life into one dedicated page. So this is essentially how a dashboard would help and support businesses when it comes to carbon emissions. And I think that's all. Okay.
Any questions?
What do you